We are back, and we're going to be continuing the Browns 2022 positional previews as training camp moves forward. This time, we're getting closer to the end of this thing. We're going to move on and talk about the cornerback room throughout camp. We're going to start off with Denzel Ward, the Warden, recently signed an extension, so there's not going to be any questions about whether he's going to be here long term or not. I know there were some inklings around maybe Denzel Ward going in a trade for Deshaun Watson. That thankfully, thank goodness, that did not happen at all. So he is currently on the PUP list, but that's pretty much just a formality. This injury he has isn't projected to cut into the regular season or anything. I think this is just a formality. This is just a precautionary measure, which is good because you don't really want to risk something in the preseason and training camp when you know what Denzel Ward is. He is your premier shutdown cornerback. If you're playing man coverage, whoever the best wide receiver is on the other opposing offense, then Denzel Ward is going to be on that guy. And in zone defense, he'll just play his zone defense. There's no really, you want to get him into football shape, obviously, but if there's even a chance that, working him out right now aggravates an injury or makes an injury even worse and does cut into regular season time, then the best course of action, obviously, is to sit him out and just wait for him to be fully healed. But, he's a legitimate shutdown corner, a number one option. He's been the best D-back on the Browns pretty much ever since he stepped in. He's made an immediate impact ever since his rookie year. One of John Dorsey's best draft picks, obviously. He wasn't around for very many drafts, but he did nail that pick at 4 when, Denzel Ward at 4 seemed to be kind of a reach, but John Dorsey definitely nailed that pick out of the ballpark. People do make like a bit of a thing out of his injury history, and while he does have a bit of an issue with injuries, it's kind of overblown. In the 65 games that he had an opportunity to play, he's only missed 13, so he's played in 52 out of 65 games. He only missed 2 games all of last season, so while there have been times when he's been hurt, and that does suck, I think that just speaks to how much of an impact player he is, where people have usually think that he's missed way more time than he has, and that's pretty much because he's such an impact. When he's not there, 1 game can seem like 2 games if you're missing your best cornerback. Moving on to second-year guy Greg Newsome, who had a very good rookie season, a breakout season. Him and Denzel Ward seem to be a cornerback duo that doesn't really have your top 2 guys. There's no pushover there. You send one guy to the left, one guy to the right, but they're both going to be smothered by what seems to be a pretty good shutdown corner if they're playing in man defense. If he can replicate his rookie success and even grow on that, that would be great. That seems to be where his career is headed. That was a great pick last year in the first round from Andrew Berry. He has lived up to that first round billing. He's lived up to being a first round pick and even more. Definitely could be definitely a Pro Bowler. Is that even that much of an accomplishment with all like the people who opt out and injuries and all that? But definitely Pro Bowler. I could see him making some All-Pro teams in his career with the Browns, hopefully. So I think him and Denzel Ward could be a cornerback duo that could terrorize offenses for years to come now. Moving forward to Greedy Williams on the roster. Greedy Williams is a player that hasn't been bad by any necessary stretch of the means. He hasn't been a bad player. It just seems that he hasn't reached the ceiling that those who are really high on him as maybe a second-round steal during the draft when they traded that first-round pick for Odell Beckham. They used that first pick in the second round on Greedy Williams. He hasn't quite reached the ceiling that some of the people who are high on him maybe think that he could reach, although I think a lot of that has to do with him missing, I believe, his sophomore season with a nerve injury in his neck. Those are never fun to deal with. Those can take a long time, and it did. It took a whole season away from him. He seems to have gotten back to a bit of a groove. He had some really good plays last year. Again, he hasn't been bad by any stretch of the means. Is not even average. He's been pretty solid when he's out there, but he just hasn't become a next level player like some thought he might be at this stage. But I think he can continue to develop, and he's gonna be a guy who definitely sees some competition. He's not like Denzel Ward or Greg Newsome, where his position on the depth chart is locked. And speaking of competition for Greedy Williams, draft pick Martin Emerson out of this year's draft, 3rd-round pick out of Mississippi State. They drafted him. He was their first pick in this year's draft after trading their first-round pick to the Texans and trading down out of that second-round pick. This seemed like a little bit of a strange position, a strange choice at first to draft him, because cornerback didn't really seem like a position of need, and then they find out they're going to trade Troy Hill back to the Rams for a 5th-round pick, and then it makes a little more sense. So Troy Hill had not a great year with the Browns. He's traded out. Martin Emerson is brought in and is viewed as somebody that maybe could take Greedy Williams' spot as the starter and in the slot cornerback position. That's going to be a pretty interesting battle throughout camp. We'll see how they do in preseason games. I think something that, this is good for Martin Emerson, because if Martin Emerson is just good enough and he's just better than Greedy and gets that starting role, that's great for the Browns. And if this pushes Greedy Williams to, compete harder in the offseason and really hone in on on his craft and what he's doing, then that's good for the Browns too. I feel like bringing in this competition for players who are already good, but to make them even better, is something that what the offseason is for. That's what training camp is for. And Martin Emerson looks like he could, if not right now this season, definitely later on down the road, he could definitely be a starter in the starting 11 on the defense and make an impact there. Now let's talk about A.J. Green. A.J. Green grew a lot on me last year, and what I've been hearing is that he's had a very, very good camp. He's breaking up a lot of passes. He's a guy who, his rookie year, he wasn't really that great. They kind of had to turn to him because everybody was hurt and just bad and COVID stuff, and the 2020 season was great, but that secondary was a mess. But this year, A.J. Green, really improved on what he performed out his rookie season. I think A.J. Green can be another guy who, pushes some of the players that might be up in the depth chart above him, pushes them to be better because he's going to be fighting for those positions. So he's either going to surpass them or he's going to, iron on iron, make them better, the people who are above him on the depth chart. And A.J. Green is another guy who, in pass coverage packages, he's not a bad guy to slide in. He has definitely improved. He's, taken his NFL experience and learned from it, gotten better, and I think for A.J. Green, he could become a solid piece on an already solid defense and cornerback room. Now we're wading into the depths of the depth chart a little bit. Could have worded that better, but oh well. Herb Miller, he was a practice squad guy last year. He did play 140 snaps in 9 games, so he does have NFL experience, but as far as being a consistent guy in the lineup, you're probably not going to get that from him. He's not going to be on the starting 11, and if he gets in, then maybe it's because somebody's hurt. You need guys who do have experience. You can't just have, your starters and then like people who haven't played before. So it's good that Herb Miller is there, kind of filling in an emergency role. He's been around the league for a year or two now, or maybe longer. Herb Miller is a guy that you kind of just look at and he's there. He's not a horrible option, but not necessarily somebody you want to see in your starting 11. Not necessarily somebody you want to see starting, cracking the lineup or anything. So that's Herb Miller. There's Parnell Motley. He's been in the league for a few years. Hasn't really gotten much of an opportunity anywhere else that he's been. He's played in a few games for his teams, played in some snaps, hasn't really done much of anything, but it's training camp. You got to get bodies in there taking flyers on guys. If these guys prove to be way better than people think they were, what they were before, that would be great. But I don't think Parnell Motley makes the final 53-man roster, that's for sure. Shaun Jolly, an undrafted rookie from Appalachian State, is definitely an interesting case. He was the number 1 ranked college defensive back in 2019, and that is per the PFF draft guide. So this is a very interesting undrafted free agent signing. Maybe this is a steal. This could be a guy who ends up making the final 53-man roster, and that would be tremendous. It's always really fun to see somebody who wasn't even drafted end up proving everybody wrong and making the final roster and going on to have a decent and solid NFL career for themselves. And especially from a college like Appalachian State, and if that's what Shaun Jolly becomes, then I'm all here for it. I'll be looking to see how the coaching staff reacts to his training camp and what perception is around him during the end of training camp and how he does in preseason games and stuff. I think that Shaun Jolly could be a diamond in the rough that the Browns just happened to find after the draft. And to end this video off, Reggie Robinson was waived today, and in comes Lavert Hill. I tried to look up stats for Lavert Hill and could not find any. He's been on some practice squads. I literally could not find any NFL stats for him, so I don't think he's gotten any snaps in regular season games. Although maybe Pro Football Reference and the ESPN stats are lying and they're hiding and they have some conspiracy against Lavert Hill, which would be hilarious. But I don't think that he makes the final 53-man roster, obviously. This is probably just a training camp body to replace Reggie Robinson, the guy that they just waived. Hopefully he's better than expected, but I wouldn't count on it. So that's pretty much it. Thank you all for watching this video. Please feel free to like and subscribe if you did enjoy the video and you would like to see more. Let me know what you think about the Browns cornerback room in the comments below. Thank you all again for watching, and see you on the next one.